There's a truth about men that almost no one dares to speak, not because it's unknown, but because it's uncomfortable, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. It changes the way you look at every man you've ever loved. It makes you realize why he pulled away when you gave your all, why he suddenly grew cold after promising forever, and why the more you tried to love him, the further he drifted. Here it is. The number one truth about men is this. A man does not fall in love through comfort. He falls in love through contrast. Let that sink in, because most women are taught the opposite. You were told to nurture him, to care, to be understanding. And yes, that has its place. But here's the darker, deeper truth. A man's psyche, his unconscious, is drawn not toward what soothes him, but toward what awakens him. And awakening in the male psyche rarely comes from peace. It comes from mystery, Carl. Jung understood this long before modern psychology gave it language. He called it the dance between the anima, the inner feminine, and the shadow, the repressed self. Every man, Jung said, carries within him an inner woman, his anima. She represents the emotional, intuitive and spiritual part of his being, the part that society teaches him to suppress. But here's the paradox. Even though he hides her, he hungers for her. That hunger is what drives him toward women, toward connection, beauty, and emotional depth. When he meets a woman who mirrors that inner energy, who isn't just kind, but mysterious, emotionally grounded and self-possessed, something ancient stirs inside him. He doesn't just want her. He remembers her, not as someone from his past, but as someone from his psyche. She becomes the mirror of his soul, the gateway to the parts of himself he's been afraid to feel. That's why he becomes obsessed, not because of physical attraction alone, but because she represents the forgotten pieces of his own soul. But here's where the story turns dark. Most men can't handle that mirror for long. When a woman awakens a man's anima, when she reflects his depth, his vulnerability, his hidden longings, it creates both desire and fear. Desire, because he's drawn to her energy like gravity. Fear, because that energy exposes everything he's been running from. So what does he do? He runs not from you, but from himself. He says things like, "I'm not ready, I just need space. It's not you, it's me." And for once, it's true. It really is him. It's his unconscious screaming for safety, for control, for ego. Because love, real love, demands surrender, and most men have never learned how to surrender without feeling weak. You see, from childhood, men are taught to build walls. Don't cry, be strong, don't show weakness. So they learn to live on the surface, where logic replaces emotion, and achievement replaces connection. But when they meet a woman who feels deeply, who sees through them, who looks not at the mask but at the man behind it, they panic, because for the first time they're seen without armor. And no man, no matter how confident, feels entirely safe when naked before. Emotional truth. That's why some men chase love and destroy it in the same breath. That's why he can adore you one day and turn cold the next. It's not always manipulation. It's his shadow reacting to exposure. Jung said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. That's what happens in love, transformation. And transformation, for most men, is terrifying. So the real question isn't, why did he leave? The real question is, what did he see in you that made him confront himself? Because the truth about men is that the woman who stirs his soul is rarely the one he's ready for. She's the one who challenges him to evolve, and evolution always begins with resistance. Think back to the man who pulled away, who grew distant, who seemed confused by his own feelings. He wasn't rejecting you. He was rejecting the mirror. He saw himself reflected in your eyes, the parts he hides from the world, and he wasn't ready to face them. But here's the thing. The deeper his resistance, the stronger the connection truly was, because indifference doesn't create confusion. Recognition does. He recognized his anima in you, and it terrified him. Let's make this real. You've probably experienced this pattern before, and a man who is drawn to you, completely magnetized by your energy, only to suddenly pull away when things start to feel too real. That's not a lack of love. That's a lack of inner maturity. You triggered something ancient inside him, the yearning for wholeness, for emotional depth. But he didn't have the tools to meet it, so he ran to what's easier: shallower connections, surface-level conversations, safe affection that doesn't ask for emotional honesty. But the tragedy is this: once a man has tasted real connection, nothing else satisfies him. He may distract himself, chase other women, bury himself in work, but the echo of you will follow him. Because the number one truth about men isn't that they're heartless, careless, or incapable of love. It's that they are terrified of the kind of woman who makes them face their own soul, and that woman is you. So if a man walked away from your depth, don't take it as rejection. Take it as confirmation. You reached a part of him no one else could touch. You reminded him of the emotional truth he spent a lifetime avoiding, and sooner or later, whether in this lifetime or the next, he will come face to face with the part of himself he first met in you, because you weren't just another woman. You were his mirror, his wake-up call, his invitation to wholeness. And that's the truth no one ever tells you. If this message resonates, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this truth. Because understanding men isn't about decoding their behavior. It's about learning how their unconscious works. So now that we've peeled back the first layer, that men fall in love not through comfort, but through contrast, let's go even deeper. Because here's what most people miss. Once a man meets a woman who awakens something real in him, even if he runs, even if he pretends not to care, she never truly leaves his psyche. It's not romantic poetry. It's psychological imprinting. Carl Jung called this the meeting of the anima projection, the moment when a man's inner world attaches to an external symbol. And when that symbol happens to be a woman who reflects his hidden depths, her energy becomes unforgettable. That's why so many men return years later. That's why he texts you out of nowhere after you've healed. That's why he checks in when you've finally moved on. He's not chasing you for closure. He's chasing the feeling you awoke in him, the feeling he can't replicate anywhere else. Because here's the hidden truth about men. When you touch his unconscious, you leave fingerprints on his soul. Let's decode this step by step. When a man meets a woman who embodies qualities he's suppressed, emotional depth, intuition, mystery, self-possession, his ego feels both drawn and threatened. Drawn, because she awakens the parts of him he's starved of. Threatened, because she challenges the version of himself he believes he must be. That's why men often feel torn between two emotional poles, fascination and fear. He becomes addicted to her presence, not in the way a man becomes addicted to attention or validation, but in a way that feels almost spiritual. She represents wholeness. She is the embodiment of everything he subconsciously craves but cannot yet claim. This is why Jung described love as a process of individuation, the journey toward becoming whole. The tragedy is that most men stop halfway. They love the woman who mirrors their soul, but they can't integrate her energy, so they retreat into comfort, routine, or control. They chase the illusion of safety instead of the discomfort of transformation. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how a man can date women who seem similar, and yet none of them ever quite touch him the way you did? That's not coincidence. That's the echo of a connection that was never resolved. Because once a man's shadow is activated, he's forced to feel emotions he's buried for decades. Guilt, vulnerability, longing, even shame. And most men, instead of sitting with those emotions, try to suppress them again. So he goes back to what's easy: surface-level relationships, casual flings, temporary highs. But deep down, he's haunted not by what you did, but by what you represented. You weren't just another woman. You were his invitation to awaken. Here's the darker side of that truth. The reason so many women end up emotionally exhausted by men who can't match their depth. When a man hasn't confronted his shadow, his insecurities, his fear of failure, his emotional immaturity, he will unconsciously use the woman who awakens him as both his muse and his emotional scapegoat. He'll oscillate between desire and rejection, between connection and withdrawal. He'll pull you close to feel alive, and then push you away to regain control. This push and pull dynamic isn't random. It's his psyche in turmoil. He's Drawn to you because you represent healing. He avoids you because healing demands change, and change threatens the ego. So, while you're wondering, what did I do wrong? He's battling himself between the man he is and the man he could become if he stopped running. That's why Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life. And you will call it fate. He calls it confusion. You call it heartbreak. But really, it's the unconscious seeking wholeness through chaos. Now let's talk about addiction, because love, especially this kind of love, can become an obsession for both sides. When a man experiences deep emotional intimacy, it triggers the same neurological pathways as addiction: dopamine, oxytocin, anticipation. But beyond biology, there's something more haunting: energetic imprinting. He becomes addicted to the energy of the woman who mirrored his depth. Not her body, not her words, but her presence. He can't stop thinking about her because she became the reflection of his inner truth. And here's the twist. The moment she detaches, the addiction intensifies. The moment she stops chasing, stops explaining, stops trying to fix him, his psyche panics because the external source of his emotional stimulation has vanished. That's when you see men return, not out of love, but out of energetic withdrawal. He wants the feeling back, not necessarily the responsibility that comes with it, but in that moment, the power dynamic shifts, because now you are the conscious one, and he is the seeker. Here's what that means for you. You cannot heal a man who refuses to confront his own shadow. You can love him. You can understand him. But if you absorb his pain as your purpose, you become part of his avoidance. The woman who truly transforms a man doesn't save him. She triggers him to save himself. Your role is not to be his therapist, or his mother, or his emotional sponge. Your role is to embody your truth so powerfully that he either rises to meet it or drifts away. And if he drifts, let him. Because one of the most misunderstood lessons in feminine psychology is this: woman's power isn't in how much she gives. It's in what she refuses to give away. When you hold your energy, your time, your emotional presence, your forgiveness, as something sacred, you stop being the reflection of his fantasy and become the catalyst for his evolution. And only then does he begin to understand the truth he's been running from. That love was never about possession. It was about awakening. If you're beginning to see this pattern in your own relationships, the cycle of connection and withdrawal, of emotional highs followed by silence, don't rush to fix it. Observe it, because awareness is the first step toward power. In the final part of this video, we'll explore the resolution, how to step into your higher feminine energy, how to stop mirroring his chaos, and how to use your awareness as your ultimate form of attraction and freedom. Because the number one truth about men isn't just something to understand, it's something to embody. So now you know. The truth about men isn't hidden in some secret code, and it isn't about how to get him to text back or what to say to make him miss you. It's about understanding what's actually happening inside his psyche. And once you understand that, something powerful shifts, not in him but in you, because knowledge changes the game. Once you see the mechanism behind the mask, you stop taking his behavior personally. You stop internalizing his silence. You stop believing his withdrawal means you aren't enough. You begin to realize that his reactions are reflections of his own internal conflict, the war between his ego and his soul. Jung said that most people project their inner struggles onto others because they haven't yet faced the darkness within. That's exactly what happens in love. Men project their fears, their unmet needs, their mother wounds, and their insecurities onto the women who awaken them. And when you see that, really see it, you step into your true feminine power. Let's be honest, you've probably tried everything to make him understand, explaining, crying, proving your worth, being patient, forgiving over and over again. But here's the uncomfortable truth. When a man hasn't met his own soul, he can't meet yours no matter how much you love him. No matter how deeply you connect, you can't do his inner work for him. And that's the lesson that breaks every woman before it makes her whole. Because at first, it feels cruel, and to watch him spiral, to feel him detach, to know you could love him into wholeness if only he'd let you. But that's not your path. Your path is to hold space for truth, not fantasy. To stand in the power of awareness and say, I see you, but I will not lose myself trying to save you. The real power of feminine energy is not control. It's consciousness you don't manipulate. You don't chase. You don't beg. You observe. You embody. You become because men, especially those still ruled by ego, are unconsciously drawn to what they cannot fully define. That's why the mystery of a woman who knows her worth is magnetic. She doesn't use words to prove it. Her energy speaks louder than anything she could ever say, and in that silence, something happens inside him. He starts to feel the loss, not of attention, but of presence. Because when a woman detaches emotionally, not from anger, but from awareness, a man feels it in his core. It's not punishment, it's reflection. He finally sees what he's been missing, not control, not validation, but connection. But here's where you reclaim your story. You don't wait for him to awaken. You use the experience as your initiation, because the truth about men is also the truth about you. That love is not meant to enslave you, but to awaken you. Every heartbreak, every silence, every mixed signal was never about rejection. It was about redirection, guiding you back to your own center. When you start to understand this, you stop seeing love as a battlefield and start seeing it as a mirror. Every person you've ever loved was showing you something about your own unconscious, your wounds, your fears, your desires. That's why Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And sometimes that journey begins with loss, with the silence of a man who doesn't understand what he's losing, with the realization that the love you were giving him was the same love you needed to give yourself. You see, when you finally pull your energy back, something miraculous happens. You begin to heal in layers. The need for validation fades, the obsession with answers quiets, the overthinking dissolves into peace. You start to move differently, grounded, calm, magnetic. You no longer react to his distance. You respond with detachment. You no longer chase closure. You become closure. Because the woman who knows her worth doesn't beg for attention. She attracts energy that matches her frequency. And that, right there, is the transformation that no man can ignore. It's not that you stop caring. It's that you start caring about yourself more than the outcome. That's the shift that turns heartbreak into evolution. When you reach that level of awareness, men feel it instantly. It's the quiet confidence, the mystery, the depth. It's the aura of someone who has seen darkness and chosen not to live in it. That's what makes you unforgettable. Not your beauty, not your effort, but your energy. Because while the world teaches women to chase love, Jungian psychology teaches the opposite. Integrate first. Attract second. You attract what you have become conscious of within yourself. When you integrate your own shadow, when you stop seeking love to heal your wounds, you stop repeating the same patterns. You stop being drawn to emotionally unavailable men. You stop mistaking intensity for intimacy. You begin to see love clearly, as a reflection of your inner state, and that's when everything changes. So yes, the number one truth about men that no one ever tells you is that they fall in love not with comfort, but with awakening. But the deeper truth, and the truth beneath the truth, is that you were never meant to be the teacher, the healer, or the savior. You were meant to be the mirror. And once the lesson is complete, you don't cling to the reflection. You walk forward into your wholeness, your sovereignty, your quiet power. Because the moment you stop chasing love is the moment love starts chasing you. Not the kind that confuses or drains you, the kind that sees you, the kind that meets you in truth, not in illusion. That's the energy of a conscious man, one who has done his own inner work, integrated his shadow, and no longer fears the depth of a woman's soul. And until that man arrives, you remain at peace, because you've become the love you were waiting for. If this message awakened something in you, subscribe. Not just for more content, but for more truth. Because we're not here to talk about surface-level relationships. We're here to uncover the psychology of attraction, healing, and transformation, one truth at a time. Remember, the more conscious you become, the less chaos you attract. And when you learn to see beyond behavior into the soul behind it, Love stops being a battlefield and becomes a mirror for your evolution. You don't need to chase love. You need to become love. Aware. Grounded, magnetic. That's the truth no one ever tells you, and now,